leaking top insider stock trades every day until they stop us. Remember, 90% of insider stock trades are totally useless. We need to dig deep to find those unusual and abnormal insider trades that could be high signal, specifically looking for insiders doing some sketchy stuff, which, speaking of sketchy stuff, we have maybe the king of sketchy CEO moves, Elon Musk, making a massive billion-dollar purchase yesterday, which we will see when we go look at the stats here. But you can see by far the biggest daily purchase in like a very, very long time. His purchase alone was more than most weekly purchases and already almost equaled the full monthly purchases from all insiders for last month, just with him alone. So very huge purchase. Outside of him, though, it was actually a pretty bullish day anyways yesterday. We got back above our median insider trades that are buys lines for the first time in about a week or so, and then those two are really the only two we've had since the very beginning of, or since the end of August, I guess, middle end of August. So September overall had been a very low month, and it still really is, even with today's purchases coming in pretty bullish, relatively speaking. It's still leaving us down here below the average line. So we'll see how things start to shake out, but we had a pretty strong run there of just slightly more negative insider purchasing sentiment. Again, the highest signal stuff is really when you look over longer time periods, like the monthly or really the quarterly, and you see these huge insider buys. That's the highest signal. The low insider sells are much harder to read. A lot of times the insiders tend to be selling quite a bit before when the actual downturn starts to happen. You also have, like, during earnings seasons, insiders sell a lot more, so a lot more noise there. We really want to see huge insider buying, which we haven't seen in quite a while, but definitely a more bullish day today. So let's go take a look at some of these insider trades, and we'll start with the purchases, where we'll certainly see Elon Musk right up there at the very top. So let's get the most recent filings that we have available. We can see Elon Musk here with the billion-dollar purchase. He hasn't bought since way back in 2020 or something like that. Unfortunate timing right before COVID, but worked out, still up almost 10x since then. Overall, his purchasing and selling activity has been timed quite well. Unusually, this would be the first purchase where he's actually buying after the stock is already up quite a bit. It was underperforming a little bit during this run-up, but recently has had a really strong last 3 months, which has now helped it, have a really strong last year as well, and really catch back up with maybe some of the other Mag 7 that it was behind. But you can see we saw him selling a bunch back here at the top back in 2021, so he does tend to time these pretty well. Obviously, the signing of the new agreement that could make him like $1 trillion or whatever the insane employment agreement that he signed was. After that, we then saw towards the end of last week, we saw a bunch of crazy big options flow coming in, which also helped push the price up. And then now, of course, you have him buying, which also helped push the price up. So a lot of, let's say, non-fundamental mechanics at work here at Tesla trying to push the price up. And frankly, Tesla is probably in the hardest place it's been fundamentals-wise, company-wise. And Elon getting this huge the compensation agreement is going to be tough for the fundamentals to be able to match up with what that compensation agreement wants to happen. And we already saw some very sketchy behavior, to say the least, from Musk back with his previous executive compensation agreement with, announcing funding secured when he didn't have funding and was actually very close to bankruptcy, which helped push the price up and help stave that off. So I would expect to see a lot of, shenanigans maybe, or financial engineering stuff going on at Tesla to really try to get this stock price moving in the right direction for the next, foreseeable future at least. So it'll be interesting to see what's going on there. Elon definitely wants the price up, and he has the resources to do it. Basically, everybody except Elon has been selling pretty consistently. Again, none of that really matters as Elon kind of holds all the cards. CG Oncology here, this Viking Cake was just buying BlackRock coffee bar, part of an IPO. Not much to really do there. Now, we do have a very big $50 million purchase by a director at CG Oncology. As you can see, this is his first ever purchase. If we look, historically, there's been a couple of small sales here by some insiders, but no real purchases since way back here, which was well-timed by a bunch of insiders buying the stock back there, at least well-timed over the short term. But some good news kind of came out recently, which we can see if we open up a couple of these. Bond 003 cohort coming out. So this was a positive announcement. This is what really led to this kind of run up here. I'm just going to click into this so we can, that's what really has led into this increase, over the last month or so, or at least I guess the second half of that increase. They also announced they've completed an enrollment in another trial they've got going on. I don't know exactly when they're going to start, if they have any other, I tried to look, but I couldn't find any hard dates for when they might have other big news announcements coming up or any trial readouts or any of that. But definitely positive news recently on the trial front here with the news coming out. And then you tack that on with an insider now buying $50 million of the stock. And another thing you'll notice in these biotech companies are so heavily weighted on announcements. And so the stock doesn't move, there's nothing really moving the stock until these announcements come out. So you can a lot of times start to see as, investors start to notice the stock and as you start to have positive news come out, the stock just kind of will continue on the trajectory for quite a while until some news comes out to change it. So it could be interesting here. If we go see, I wonder what the momentum tells us. I like to look at like the 200-day. The literature says the 200-day is probably the best. So you can see it has just recently curled up above this 200-day, which now means has momentum on its side. So any technical trader or just any fundamentally even investor that likes to invest on companies with only positive momentum will now be noticing you have the insider buying. That's more, a positive signal. You might start to see retail investors pick up the story as more good news comes out or as they catch wind of the insider trading or anything like that. So it definitely seems like the momentum is in the right direction. I don't see any upcoming near-term catalysts that would, cause the stock to boom, but it's heading in the right direction for sure. And I would think this huge insider purchase is only going to help it continue in that direction. What else do we have here? This one, I believe, so when you see 0 shares here, it means there's also selling probably on the same, let's actually just pull up the actual filing. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure what's going on here. Looks like they're probably just moving it. Yeah, looks like they're just moving shares around basically is really what was going on here. So not actually any real buying going on. Now I've got Patrick Ryan of Ryan Specialty Holdings, who is certainly the executive chairman because they share the same last name. So let's go take a look what's going on here. This is a company that's been struggling recently, down 25% in the last 6 months. This is a huge buy though. The largest buy, I believe, ever at this company. We can actually just sort on transaction value here real quick. So if we look at the earnings transcript, we can get a good idea just to see what's going on, if they have any stories coming out or basically what they're saying about, we're trying to basically create a story for why the stock might be turning around now. And one thing that you'll notice here is that they just say over and over again, considering the property headwind. You then have the CEO coming in. I guess he doesn't mention headwind, but he does. Oh, he says headwinds. Why is this not highlighting? So you can see like Patrick Ryan, the executive chairman and founder, saying headwind multiple times. You got the CEO saying headwinds. You have, what are we on? Still in the CEO here? Yeah, still under the CEO saying headwinds. You then have the CFO saying headwinds. So they've mentioned quite a few headwinds. You'll also notice if you were to read through this that they don't actually expect, originally earlier in the year, they thought things were going to start to turn around in the second half of this year. They no longer believe that is the case, but this insider purchasing might be hinting that they think they've kind of reached the bottom of maybe this macro softness and weakness and think things might start to turn around. So this is one of those things where a couple 10% owners, but in terms of just individuals buying the stock, this is the largest purchase, and it was by, the executive chairman here. And we can look historically, we can see when his purchases were, which these are a bunch of small, really small, just 17, which I'm not entirely sure why he was buying such small amounts, but you got 17,000, 5,000. This one's also in the 5,000 range. But if you look historically, the only other times he bought was in this big dip back in 2022, which he was buying, down while the stock was well down into the 30s, the low to mid 30s, and the stock came back up, at least out of the 40s, and then over long term it went up quite a bit. And then you also bought another dip here in the 30s, and then obviously the stock went up quite a bit since then. So now you've got him buying another dip here, largest purchase ever. He's obviously very involved in the company, and they seem to believe most of the weakness from reading the earnings call, most of the weakness comes from just sort of macro or headwinds that are outside of their control. This would be one of those ones where it's like you don't even have to look at the momentum here, as we just know for certain that the momentum is going to be in the wrong direction. Treading well below, this is the 200-day line here. What you might want to do here, this might be one of those ones where you want to wait and actually see if things are going to turn around. One way you could do that is to just wait for this. This 200-day line is going to continue falling down here for a while as the stock stock has gone down, and then, the stock price is going to, hopefully be flat or hopefully start to turn around. And then at some point you'll see those cross, and that might be a good time to take a better look at it instead of trying to perfectly nail the bottom here. Might be tough to do. But seeing the executive buying the stock, seeing the executive chairman buying the stock is certainly notable, especially when they're talking about those macro headwinds that don't seem to be an issue with the company itself. Just seems to be, maybe they think those are going to start to subside here soon. Saba Capital continuing to buy Asa Gold. We've seen that, just over and over and over again, continue to buy. The stock continues to go up, so that's worked out quite well for them. Another one we've got here is Opendoor, a director now getting in on the buying, though this was part of a purchase agreement, which means he probably got the stock at a much better price than you're going to. $665. Stock is well above $9 now, probably. Yeah, well above $9. So good work if you can get some big old discounts like that, but most of us can't. We got insider buying here at Rapport Therapeutics. Let's see if there's any news about this. I don't see any news, though. I thought I did see something I actually thought I saw this come across my Twitter feed today. Let's see. Mostly just talking about Truist. Looks like they just initiated a report with a $44 price target on it, which I don't remember what the price is right now. 25, 36, or 39 or whatever it was. So, some analyst coverage coming on. It looks like they might have phase 2 trial. They released some positive top-line results here on September 8th, which doesn't seem like it moved the stock price all that much. So this is kind of a similar-ish situation that with CG Oncology. Okay, so yeah, there it is. So they just recently had some positive results. Stock fell off a little bit, and now we see a couple insiders buying. So let's actually go see who else is buying here. So we've got a couple directors and another one here, another director. So 3 directors buying the stock after positive results coming out there. This one now would be you got to figure out what the story here is and what they are. I don't know exactly whether or not they're going to start commercializing it very soon and then see how that rollout will go or what the next steps here are. Interesting to see good news come out, insiders buying after the good news and after the huge stock pop, I think is an interesting, especially if you're interested in the biotech sector. I think that can be pretty interesting there. 2 other ones that we want to touch on that are pretty interesting are Synopsys and SmartRent. So Synopsys, if you paid any attention to the tech area, this was a massive miss on earnings, causing the stock to fall 30% in one day after missing on earnings. Biggest one-day stock fall for this company ever. And then now we are seeing the first time an insider buying the stock after this dip. We've got a director buying it who's never bought this stock before. So first ever purchase, increasing holdings by 18%. Super notable for sure. And then if we go here, you can actually see, obviously with that huge stock pop, you have a bunch of people pitching the stock or writing it up. So you have a couple earnings overviews that you can take a look at here. And then we even have some insiders buying the stock here. Buying it. Synopsys is probably a buy. Synopsys short-term, dead money, long-term compounder. So you can go read what people are saying and why other people are buying the dip. But now we're also seeing insiders starting to buy too, which is very interesting. Lastly, we've got Frank Martell here, who is the CEO at SmartRent. This is a company who had some CEO troubles, which again, you could go look through some of the transcript stuff, and we can go look through their filings too, actually. If we go take a look at some of the most recent filings, SmartRent, we can see, so they had to fire a CEO, I believe, somewhere back earlier in this year. Let's see if they see when they did it. Maybe back here. Sometime before this one, they had to basically, it seems like there was some sort of improper personal stuff going on with the previous CEO. So they had to fire that CEO. They're also now, if you look at earnings reports, this Frank Martell was recently added as the CEO. This is his first earnings call. They talk about some cost cutting that they're doing. So regarding our cost productivity and reduction initiatives at the end of the first quarter, the team implemented cost actions resulting in more than $10 million in annualized savings. They expanded this by another $20 million. So $30 million should help benefit the results for the rest of this year. I don't know if all of these I'm not sure if these are all going to be annualized savings or just the 10 million. I'm assuming all 30 million are annualized savings. So then they're hoping to achieve adjusted EBITDA and cash flow neutrality as they end this year. They have huge cash reserves. They're going to continue to fund product innovation. They're resetting their cost structure, which they also will mention. He says somewhere in here, as Daryl, the CFO, will discuss, the revenue growth was negatively impacted because of they're trying to transition away from bulk hardware deals to different revenue recognition, which will allow them to have more stable earnings. So this is a whole turnaround play. New CEO, new executives coming in, hopefully it's starting to cut costs, accelerate revenue growth. Very strong story, obviously. It all just comes down to execution at that point. But the nice thing we're seeing here is we're seeing a bunch of insiders buying the stock now, and we can even take a look at kind of some of the metrics here. You'll see that the stock is up a ton since it's up 100% basically since kind of mid this year. Already up 100% though, still trading at, well under 2 EV sales or under even 2 price for sales, which is, I don't even have to go look at the sector they're in. I know that's going to be below the average there. They just recently, not that recently, but about a month ago, they crossed above the 200 moving average. So now just, according again to the academic research, momentum heading in the right direction. You've got a full new management team. You've got a bunch of insiders buying the stock. All, 8 insider purchases here for $1.5 million. All of that to me would scream, a very bullish setup. So that is, very, very interesting setup here. I think that's good for the insider purchases. We can take just a couple look, see if there's any interesting insider sales here. Lifetime Holdings, this is just going to be 10% owners selling the stock. They've been selling decent timing, I guess, not down here though. So they've been selling quite a bit. Stock's been pretty flat. I don't know how much there's to do here. Another one where this is going to be another director selling the stock. Not the best timing for this guy either. Nvidia, what's interesting at Nvidia is how many insiders are selling not part of, a bunch of insiders just not selling as part of 10b5-1 plans is pretty odd at big tech companies like this. Obviously, his timing's been abysmal in the past as the stock's gone up a ton, but if we just take a look at how much insider selling there has been at Nvidia, certainly notable up here on this run. So, and as you look over longer time frames, we've got to be closing in on the most insider selling at any period of time there. Obviously, company with a ton of momentum and a ton of investors interested in the stock in a very hot sector. So, who knows when that'll turn around, but very interesting to see so much insider buying there. Another interesting one here is this guy, also another guy with just terrible returns because of all this selling down here that was not good. But this $13 million sale by the CEO at Interactive Brokers is notable in that it's his largest sale ever out of 70 total sales. So very, very large sale. And this is one of those ones, Interactive Brokers, Robinhood, any of those brokerages are going to suffer mightily if the economy does, turn for the worst and consumers start to get worse. Obviously, they'll be doing less trading if they have less money to trade. So that'd be interesting to see if, the economy ever decides to slow down, which consumers have been wildly strong and it doesn't seem like it's going to slow down anytime soon. Another 10% owners selling, not much history, not much to get interested in there. CoreWeave, we're just going to continue to see insiders sell post IPO lockup. Not sure how much signals there's really going to be there, but obviously is some downward pressure when you've got executives selling. Power Solutions is another one where we started to just see a ton of insiders selling. But again, super popular company in a super popular industry. Very, very hard to time the top on these kind of things. But if you look over the history, insiders don't really sell this stock very much, and they are unloading the stock now that it's up almost 500% in the last year. So getting this timing is going to be tough. If you are trying to sell or trying to figure out to short or when to sell or whatever, going to be very hard to do, but they do have some headwinds now with, all of this insider selling, and insiders clearly believe that now is a perfectly reasonable price to get out of the stock at. One last thing we'll take a look at that I do think is very interesting is this one at Packaging Corporation, where we've got the CEO here selling the stock. And the reason this is interesting is it's actually his smallest sale ever, though if you look historically, he timed his sales quite well. This one, not the best timing, but the stock was pretty down to flat over the next, it's down a little bit over the next 3 months, which you can see his win rate, and then, slightly up or flat over the next 6 months. So the stock then did go up, and he pretty close to nailing the top here at the end of 2024. But what makes this one interesting is that if we take a look at the news here, the filing date, September 15th, they scheduled their conference call to discuss their third quarter earnings. So their third quarter earnings are going to be coming out October 22nd. So why does that get interesting? He's selling the stock, he's not in a blackout period yet, but the quarter ends, I assume, at the end of September. So we're 2 weeks away from quarter ending, and then you're going to do the earnings results afterwards. But if you only have 2 weeks of the 12 left in the quarter, you clearly know, you have a pretty good idea how this quarter is shaping up. The company doesn't tend to have huge dips, though it did have about a 10% dip here after, again, I assume earnings, but it could be something else. So not the most volatile company, but the CEO selling the stock when this quarter is pretty close to fully baked. He should have a good idea. I just wouldn't expect him to be selling stock if he knew that these earnings results are going to be very good, because why would he not just wait until after those earnings? So in that case, I think this is a very, very interesting insider sell, deciding to time it, right at the end of the quarter before they're going to announce their earnings. So that's all for today. You can head to CEOWatcher.com to find all the top insider trades. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.